Welcome back to another episode of Girls Talk Money. We are diving today into the topic of the cost of moving in your 20s, which has been relevant for each of us in different ways. I am moving out of my parents' house for the first time. Erin has lived on her own and is moving into a new space. We're going to dive more into the details of our individual situations, but it's just such a relevant topic for people in their 20s as we all make lots of different moves. But before we dive in, we're going to give our little weekly recap as we do every week. What's been going on in your life, Erin?
Yes, I have been so excited to film this episode because I feel like I hold off on telling you things for the purpose of catching up in this little weekly recap segment.
Love that.
Grace and I are obviously social media turned in real life friends, but we don't live in the same city. We text literally every single day, but I do purposely try to hold things off so that we do have some things to talk about in this little weekly recap. So this is always really fun. One thing that I have been really excited to tell you is that I finally ordered the Aura ring. You have officially convinced me. Grace has had the Aura ring. How long have you had it?
Probably at this point, probably like 6 months or so.
Okay, so not too long, but for context, I got off of hormonal birth control over a year ago now, and I've just been really looking for a way to track my cycles, the whole natural cycles, or tracking your cycle without the Aura ring is a little time intensive and kind of hard to keep up with if you aren't on hormonal birth control and you do this to any extent. You have to track your temperature or sleep with a little wristband thing on. There's just a lot of things that go into it, and I'm not the best with keeping up with it. So I ordered the Aura ring as a Christmas present to myself, but when I was ordering it, I actually saw on their site that it's FSA and HSA eligible, and I do have about $600 and some sitting in my HSA account from my previous employer that I've been kind of looking to do something with. So I'm going to see if I can get the amount that I spent on the Aura ring reimbursed through my old HSA account, which would be really nice because then it wouldn't have to be my Christmas present to myself because it's kind of expensive. The gold one is, I think it was with taxes, almost $500. And then natural cycles is $100 a year. And then the Aura ring subscription is $6 a month. It is kind of an investment, but obviously it's a worthwhile investment regardless.
It is. It's definitely an investment. I just made a video about this the other day. There's a competitor coming out on the market called the Evie ring, which is $269 and it has no subscription. But I genuinely think the Aura ring is 100% worth it. I'm so happy for you. That's the reason I got it too, is because I came off hormonal birth control and I started to do natural cycles where you have to track your temperature every single day. And when you have a really early flight and you wake up a million times before you're supposed to get up because you're so terrified of missing the flight, that's what I would do with this thermometer, taking my temperature, because you have to take it the second you wake up. And I was I was waking up at 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning. I was girl, I'm you cannot keep doing this. So I felt like splurging on the ring was honestly worth it. And I will say the updates and stuff, it just came out with an update the other day where now it tracks your heart rate throughout the day to measure stress levels. And I love that because I am an anxious girly. So I feel like it's going to help me be more aware of, I don't know, my stress levels and the insights. Yeah. And the insights on your cycle too are really crazy. I noticed during certain phases of my cycle, my readiness score will drop, or I don't sleep as well, or I sleep more, which is just I don't know, it's really helped me take care of my body a lot better. So I see it as a solid investment in your health, and even as a, what do they call it? Preventative care. It helps me get ahead on things that I could let go if I don't pay attention to.
Yeah, pregnancy aside, I mean, obviously I'm not trying to have a kid, but pregnancy aside, there are so many things that I'm looking to learn about within my cycle. My cycles have been so off since I got off of hormonal birth control, and it's been almost, I think, 18 months at this point, so it's been a while. But my periods are chronically a week late, so my cycles have been 35 to 36 days consistently for the past 6 months. For the first year, I barely got a period to begin with. Most months I didn't get one at all, so it took about a year for my period to come back. But now my cycles are so long for some reason, so I'm just excited to kind of see what's going on and like track it a little bit better. And yeah, so that's what's going on in my week. I mean, that was like my big update. Some other things that I have on this list here is just like getting into the season of gift giving and like planning out my content for like gift giving on a budget and all of the Christmassy things because next week is going to be Black Friday. So one of the biggest shopping weeks of the year. So looking
Yeah.
forward to that. My mom is like asking me what I want for Christmas and like all of this stuff.
Yep.
And this age is like such a weird time for like making your Christmas list and like telling your parents what you want. I have the most boring things on my list. Literally, I think the only thing in on my Christmas list in my notes app on my phone is an ironing board and I want a space heater. Those are my two Christmas gifts that I want this year. I like want an actual ironing board. All I have is a steamer right now
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
not cutting it. So those are
That's
my
so
two
funny.
big Christmas gifts. Really exciting
My
stuff.
gosh. My mom, Christmas is really big in my family. I don't know if we're just gift giving people. Gift giving is one of my love languages. I thrive at this time of year. I give gifts to like my family, friends, whatever. I also do like charity donations where I shop for, they give me like a list of kids and all
Yeah,
the
I do that
things that the
too. I
kids
love
want. And
it.
I literally thrive. Like it's so fun to me getting to like go in and like pick out kids' toys. Oh my God, I just love it. But my mom has been asking for my Christmas list since like August. She was like, "Hey guys, like what do you want for?" I was like, "Mom, it's simply August. I don't know what I want." But I think so far on my list, I have some not so practical things. I have like some Uggs. I really want the cute little Uggs because I want a pair of comfy shoes I could just wear if I'm going to go do an errand and I don't have that. I only have sneakers. And I think I also have like an air fryer though, because I'm like gonna be moving out and I'll need my own air fryer. I can't take the one we have here. Although the one that we have here actually was gifted to me a couple years ago by my
So
brother,
you
so
can't
I
take
should
it.
probably take it with me. But yeah, it's like stuff like that, like a vacuum for my apartment whenever I move out and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know. It's once you get to a certain point, I feel like it's like, okay, just get me things that are practical. I don't need these random knickknacks and, it's just keep it practical, which my mom does a
Yeah.
really great job at, I will say. Like we've gotten really good the past few years just like picking practical things.
Is also, I wouldn't call it my love language, but I do really like to do it. However, I only really like to buy for kids. Like I have five nieces and I
Oh my
love buying
gosh.
gifts for them. I literally
Oh
love it
yeah.
so much. It's so fun, especially because they're
Mhm.
girls. Like they're so fun to shop for. And there's such a variety of ages. Like my oldest niece is 17, so she's so
Oh
fun to
wow.
shop for. It's like I'm shopping for myself. But then my youngest ones are like toddlers. So like they're fun to
Yeah.
shop for too because their clothes are so cute and stuff. But then when it comes to like shopping for my boyfriend, we're kind of talking about like Christmas presents right now, and that just stresses me out. It's not that I
Mm.
don't like buying gifts, it's just it stresses me out. I feel like I would rather do like why don't we go somewhere or why don't
Mhm.
we like go get a hotel for a night and get dinner? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't want to buy him a Christmas present. It's just like it just stresses me out.
Yeah, with people like that, like even just with some of my family members, like my brother has said too, he's like, if I need something, I'm at an age as an adult with adult money and free will that I will just buy myself the item if I need it. Like if I really need the vacuum, I'm just gonna buy it. So it is kind of like tougher doing those types of things. I've gotten to the point where I have a note on my phone that's for Christmas gifts, and I literally add things throughout the entire year. So some of the
Yes.
things on my parents' lists are literally things they mentioned in like February. And I'm like, it's fine because it's still something that they would want. But yeah, I feel like I have to really prepare. But yeah, I feel like if I had a partner, I would just end up kind of doing like, let's do something together
Yeah.
because the gifts, it gets to be too much. It gets to be
For
too
sure.
much.
But what is going on in your week?
This week has been crazy, not even in terms of like working a ton of hours or anything like that, but just feeling like I'm being pulled in so many different directions. I don't know if it is an end of the year thing, but I also work primarily with startups in my marketing business. And I think a lot of them are like, okay, Q4 is coming to a close. What do we want to be doing in Q1 of next year? And so they're starting to get things lined up for that. And that just means that I'm getting, I have a really great base of clients right now and I adore them. They're all so great. And you want to give them really high quality services. But then I'm also getting inbounds of new people and you want to give them a good service too, where you want to respond quickly to their emails and get on calls with them and do all these things. And it's so hard getting pulled in so many different directions. But I had a therapy session this week. And if you don't follow me on like TikTok or Instagram, you wouldn't know, but I am a therapy girly. I go to therapy every single week with my girl Jen. I love my therapist Jen. I talk about things I learned in therapy all the time in my content. And I think everyone should go to therapy, especially Gen Zers. I feel like we're all a little traumatized from something. And in my therapy session this week, my therapist said sometimes living in accordance with your values means saying no when you really want to say yes. And I was like, ooh, like mic drop, Jen. Like, I thought that was such a good way to say that because she was asking me if I value myself and taking care of myself and my life and my happiness. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And she was like, well, she's like, looks like you've been putting that in the back burner a lot lately, girl. She was like, you got to start saying no to things, even if you do want to say it. I was like, Jen, it's like, stop it. Because it's so hard for me to say no, but I think it's been a really good lesson. I think it applies to so many things, right? Obviously, this podcast is primarily about personal finance and talking about that. And sometimes, you have certain values and it means saying no to something, even though you might really want to do it. But it's been yeah, just a crazy week. I also have been really trying to get out of my house because when it gets cold, I do not want to leave my house and I will stay here unless somebody drags me out. And it is not good for my mental health. So I've been trying to plan things in advance where because if I make plans, I'm going to show up. I'm not going to bail. So like the other day, I booked a hot yoga class and I love hot yoga, but it's like a 30-minute drive and I'm like, oh, whatever, but I know that if I pay the $15 to go to the class and put it on my calendar, I'm going to show up because I'm not wasting $15. And so I like put that on my calendar and trying to, I'm doing a little birthday dinner with my friends next week and stuff like that. So just getting things on the calendar that force me out of my house, even though that means spending more money than I might want to spend. But again, mental health needs to kind of come before the money aspect, I think.
I know. I am totally the same way when it comes to getting cold and wanting to stay inside. I have been trying to put some things on my calendar as well. Last night, my friends and I went to this holiday, it was like a Christmas pop-up bar at a
Hmm.
hotel downtown, and I actually got invited to it. It was the night before it opened up to the public, and
Oh,
this
cute.
hotel was having like a media night and invited like a bunch of creators in Pittsburgh and all of this stuff. I didn't even really recognize anyone there. I'm like not in that scene in Pittsburgh at all. I didn't even really know that there was that type of a scene in Pittsburgh. But it was so fun to just like go get like relatively dressed up, have like a drink or two and like sit there and chit chat with people.
I love
We have
that.
another one of those coming up at a different pop-up bar in a couple of weeks. And yeah, just like getting stuff on the calendar that like force you to put some regular clothes on, especially working from
Yes.
home. I literally sit in sweatpants all day, every day. Like it is so
Hmm.
easy to just feel like so crappy about yourself when you just stay inside and like don't put real clothes on for an entire week.
Yeah, I feel that. I know my friends and I are actually going to a restaurant this Sunday that is the entire inside gets decorated for
Oh, I
Christmas,
love
like floor to ceiling. And I'm so excited. I rented like a cute little dress from Fashion Pass for it. I love that. I really need to do more like wintry things
yeah.
as well because I
I want
don't
to
like
do
winter, so I need to find some joy in the cold.
I need to do more of that this year too, because, and we can talk about this a little bit in our episode since we're talking all about moving and all of that stuff.
Yes.
But I'm moving the week before Christmas this year into my new apartment. I'm moving December 20th, which means I will not be decorating for Christmas, which makes
Yeah.
me really, really sad because I love to decorate for Christmas. I'm not a big like decorator in general. My apartment is so bare, but for Christmas, I do like to decorate. However, I just realized a couple weeks ago that I actually left all of my Christmas decorations at my ex-boyfriend's house when we split. So it's kind of a good thing that I'm not decorating this year because I don't have anything to decorate with. So after Christmas, my mom always taught me like right after Christmas, go to the stores and like buy everything when it's super cheap.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be doing that to stock up for next year, but it does make me sad. I'm like not going to have a tree or anything.
Oh, that's so funny you say that because I just before we started filming, I booked a tour with this apartment complex I really like, and I'm actually going to tour it next Wednesday, which is my birthday on the 22nd. And I'm like hoping it's a winner because that would be like a really great birthday excitement to find an apartment finally that is a winner. But the woman was like, "Oh, do you have any certain timeline for moving?" And I was like, "Girl, I'll be so honest with you. I would love to be moved in by Christmas simply for the fact that I can decorate my apartment all
Oh
cute.
my
But other than
gosh.
that, I don't have a timeline." And she like laughed and she was like, "I get it." I would just love to have, yeah, my own little tree
Yeah.
and just like, I don't know, when people put on their TV the little recording of the fireplace crackling
Yes.
and they're making cookies. Oh, like I love watching those TikToks of those like vibey kind of apartments.
Oh my
I want to
gosh.
be able to do that, but otherwise I might just be doing it in my parents' house. So
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Honestly, like you're kind of inspiring me a little bit. Maybe I could buy this stuff. I feel like things start to get cheap like very close to Christmas because no one
yeah.
wants to decorate 3 days before Christmas. So maybe I'll just buy stuff that are like neutral, like a neutral
Hmm.
Christmas, not red and green, and then I can keep it up through January and just like still feel vibey,
Yeah.
but not have to feel like it's like, oh my gosh, red and green everything.
I think it was Target when I was just there. Target had a ton of super cute, neutral, like Christmassy slash wintry pillows and like things like that with cute little like trees or little decor that's more like
Winter
wintry,
vibes.
but but yeah, like kind of Christmassy. It's so cute. But yeah, okay, so you're moving from a one bedroom into a two bedroom. Give us a scoop on that.
Yes. Yeah, I guess we could just dive right into this episode since we are already
Yeah.
kind of talking about it. And for context, Grace and I talk about this topic literally every day. Every time we talk, we're talking about moving because it's just so prevalent in both of our lives right now. But yes, I am moving from a one bedroom to a two bedroom. So for context, you might know if you follow me on any of my social media accounts, back in March, I moved into a one bedroom apartment in this apartment complex in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. If you are in the Pittsburgh area, it's just right outside the city. I love my apartment complex. I get so many questions on what complex I live in. Like so many girls will DM me being like, "Oh, your apartment looks so cute." And like, "I know you live outside the city, so it's cheaper. Like, where do you live?" Like, I get a lot of like responses about that. But I moved in March and it was like one of those situations where I was just trying to get out of my ex-boyfriend's house and this was the only unit that was available, like the only one bedroom unit that was available on the first floor because I do have Bella. So I wanted to be on the first floor to have a patio and like be able to take her out really easily. But this is the smallest layout in my apartment complex. So it's only about 700 square feet. And at the time, it was like totally perfect for when I needed it to be. At the time, I was still working my corporate job. I was obviously doing social media on the side, but we didn't have the podcast. We didn't have like, obviously, it wasn't as big as it is now because it wasn't full time. So I just had like my little living space here. I had a little desk in my bedroom, and that was like totally fine for what I needed it to be. Since then, I've taken the social media thing full time. We obviously do the podcast now, which all of these things require a lot more space. Like, desk wise, and working in my bedroom wasn't really working for me. So my friend gave me this really big desk and I put it in my living room because it wouldn't fit in my bedroom. And since then, it's just really like taken over my living space. Like, I don't even have a TV out here. My boyfriend laughs at me all the time because like I have this small little couch that is so small that like Bella is the only one that sits on the couch. He like calls it Bella's couch, like it's like a dog couch.
That was
It's so small,
adorable.
but it's literally, but it's the only couch that would fit in my living room because it's so tiny. Like with the big sliding glass door, that takes up a lot of space as well. So I have a very small couch, and then I have this humongous desk, and that's kind of like my living area in this apartment. And it's just been like I'm at a place where I want to have more space. I can afford to have more space. I'm ready to like actually feel like I can live in my living space. So I am moving into a two bedroom. I'm moving again, like I said, December 20th. And just because of like the time of year, I got such a good deal on this two bedroom. I pay almost $1,500 for this one bedroom. And I got a two bedroom, which is like 1,300 square feet. So 600 more square
Oh my
feet
God.
for only 1870. So I got a really good deal on it. And
What?
I'm really excited.
Oh my God, that price is actually crazy. The two
Yeah.
bedrooms here are literally like
You couldn't
4,000.
even, yeah, you couldn't even get a one bedroom for that.
No, I couldn't. That's like, so I live at my parents' house right now, and which, if you're watching the video version of this, you can probably tell based on the leather couch, my homemade pillow that my mom made my dad, like all the things behind me, right? Isn't that so cute? My dad takes naps, and my mom crocheted him a pillow
Oh
to
my God,
nap
that's so
with.
cute.
It's so cute. But I've been living with my parents ever since I left college because I started a business when I graduated. So my income was not guaranteed, and it just didn't make sense to like go try to move somewhere. And now I live in Massachusetts also, for context, for anyone who doesn't know, and I live like an hour out from the city. So the apartments are quote unquote cheaper if I move out in my hometown, but I think moving out in my hometown would be my personal hell. So I'm trying to move closer to the city, but not be in the city. But it's like, even that, it's just so expensive. The one bedroom that I'm going to look at next week is 2250 a month, and it's roughly 750 square feet. There's a couple different layouts that are the same price but different square footage. And they're, yeah, one bedroom. So like my desk is gonna have to go in my living room, and then you have to pay an additional $50 a month for parking. And you know what I mean? It's just like, it's actually crazy. There's a two bedroom that I looked at in Providence, Rhode Island, because that's also a potential for me. Like, it's a small city, but it's a cute city, and it's a two bedroom, $2,500 a month, which, that's crazy to me. That doesn't include parking. But then the thing about that is there's no community spaces, there's no gym, there's no shared area. And it's gorgeous, gorgeous apartment, floor to ceiling windows, corner unit, it's beautiful. But I'm like, $2,500 before parking. That, I think, like, I genuinely think a piece of my soul would be just leaving my body every month when I pay that. I don't feel like I can justify it. And it's like, that's kept me living at home so much longer than I wanted to, because the cost of an apartment is just crazy. So if you're listening to this, say a prayer, send some thoughts, like put out some good juju into the universe, because I'm gonna need it. It's just so expensive. It's crazy.
That's insane. For context, I am like trying to convince Grace to move to Pittsburgh. It's obviously so affordable, and I do like Pittsburgh. Like, I think, I mean, you've never been here. Why would you move here?
Yeah.
I get it. But like, I do really like it. It's very like up and coming. I think more people in their like mid to late 20s are staying as opposed to leaving, whereas 10 to 20 years ago, everyone was leaving post college. So it's kind of on the up and up. The location that I live in is a lot more affordable than like if you go right into the city in like the super trendy areas or whatever. But even then, you would only be paying like 2,000 to 2,200 for a really nice apartment. But
Just
what would you
crazy.
say you're prioritizing more, like location, so like proximity to certain things, or your, like, I guess I don't want to call it quality of life, but like just what your space actually looks like? Because I know that's something that you and I talk about all the time, is like, okay, everyone says like you want the location to be perfect because we're in our 20s, we want to walk and we want to do all of these things, but also you and I work from home, we like own businesses out of our homes, we're here most of the time. So it's kind of like finding that balance between like being in the location that we actually want to be in, but then also we need the actual space like inside the walls to be what we want
Yeah.
them to be and to work for us.
Yeah, I've tried to be really realistic about striking a balance with this, because the thing is, and this, I think we might have talked about this in a previous episode too, but I kind of had a realization that I'm not a city girl. I'm not. It's very overwhelming to me. I don't want to be carrying my groceries down a snowy sidewalk in Boston because, I'm walking distance to the grocery store and can't justify driving. Like, I don't want it. I don't want to like be in traffic constantly. I definitely prefer like a slower pace of life type space, but I do want to be within an hour to a city, because I there's a lot of things that happen in Boston and Providence, and I would love to be close-ish to one of them. But for me, in terms of the immediate location that I live in, it has to be safe. That's 100% priority for me. I'm not going to take a cheaper place if it's in a not so great area. But I want to be walking distance to at least one thing. And I was very, like, adamant about this, and then I started to give up on it and was like, "Whatever, I'm not gonna find a place that's walking distance to something." And one of my friends, because 'cause I'm a very spiritual person, I was talking to one of my other spiritual friends, and she was like, "No," like, she's like, "Don't let that go." She's like, "There will be an apartment that will come up that will do this, like, you have to manifest it. Don't let it go. Stay true to what you really want and desire in your apartment." And, the complex that I'm going to tour next week, it's literally in a downtown area of a smaller town, but it's right on top of some of the downtown buildings. So I can walk outside and walk down the street and go to Walgreens. I think it's like Walgreens or CVS. I can walk down the street and go to a coffee shop, or there's like a couple restaurants. So there's little things like that. There's a train station that's pretty close to get into the city. And it's also a 10-minute drive from the coast, which is so nice because that was so I used to want to move to LA, which is a whole nother situation. But the reason I wanted to move to LA is because I loved being so close to the water and being able to watch the sunset and sunrise and things like that at the water. So for me, that was kind of like, it's like a good balance. I'm praying that I love the unit, but it is hard because I've never lived in an apartment before. And I've never, working from home, my desk is in my living room. I used to work at our dining room, and I used to even work in my room, and I realized working in my room was not good for my mental health. When I try to go to bed, I was only thinking about work. But I don't know what it's going to be like to work in my living room. But I also know it's probably not the most realistic right now for me to get a two-bedroom place simply because of the cost. Like, it would be at the minimum 2,600 here, and I don't want to pay that. I really don't. So I don't know. I'm trying to find a balance with that. Because I also know that as someone with anxiety and depression, I need to get out of my space. I cannot stay in my space 24/7. So I am prioritizing a space that has community spaces, like a gym, a co-working space, things like that, because I think that'll be better for my mental health as opposed to being in a complex that doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, that was definitely a big priority for me when I decided to move into this complex. I just knew that if I was moving out alone, this is going to be my first time ever in my entire life living completely by myself, other than my dog. But I just knew that I was going to feel a little bit lonely. I've always had like a roommate or multiple roommates, and I was scared to move like into an apartment by myself. So I knew that I didn't want to get just like a one-off apartment. I knew that I wanted to get an apartment inside of a complex
Mhm.
that did have like nice spaces. A dog park was really important for me because of my dog. A pool was really important for me, even though in Pittsburgh you get to use the pool like 2 months out of the year. I just I just figured that that would be a good way to meet people, like things that
Mhm.
bring people together. There's also a big clubhouse in my apartment complex that you can rent out for only a couple $100s if you wanted to
Mhm.
have like private parties and stuff. But if nothing's going on, you can just like go in there. There's a huge kitchen and like fridge and like all of these different amenities that you can use to throw a party. People have bridal showers in there all the time. Like there's just a lot of community spaces that you can use to meet people. And I have met a lot of people. I honestly do feel like I have a really big community here. It would be kind of hard for me to leave for that reason because I've met so many awesome people here. So I think that that's really important for you, especially because this is going to be your first time living by yourself.
Yeah, I know that loneliness, it's interesting that you brought that up because I was just thinking about this yesterday. I'm like, for people, like, I'm so close to my mom. We are like so close. So every day when I come home, if I went out, like last night I went out to dinner, I came home, I was like, "Hey mom, like good night, love you, whatever." And I'm like, this is gonna be so different living completely on my own. Do you ever get lonely being 100% by yourself in the apartment, and how do you combat that?
I don't get lonely just because this is such a turn of events because I was excited to live by myself, but then it just so happens that I met my
Oh
boyfriend
yeah.
at my apartment complex and now we're neighbors, so we see each other almost every single day. So I don't really think that I had too long of a time period where I was totally alone. And
Yeah.
right when I moved here, I think that I was so like, oh my gosh, I'm in this apartment by myself for the first time and I'm like meeting all these new people and like I was really prioritizing going out a lot and doing a lot of things at that period of my life. So I wasn't just staying inside. Whereas I think now if I would have stayed single and like didn't meet my boyfriend, I would be spending a lot more time alone just because like I'm not a big going out person. That life is not
Yeah.
sustainable for me. I don't really enjoy it at all, actually. So I think that I would be spending a lot of weekends just kind of hanging out by myself a lot. And I don't know if I would have gotten lonely. I will say I'm a super independent person and like have always been this way growing up. Like if I was at my parents' house in high school, I would be in my room with the door shut. I wouldn't want to be like hanging out with anyone. When I was living in the South Side with like my college roommates, I would be in my room a lot with the door shut. I just really do like to spend time alone. So I don't know if I would have felt super lonely all the time. I honestly like can't comment on it, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I think that if you like choose to move out into a complex, you'll kind of find something similar where you'll be surrounded by a lot of people when you want to be, but you'll still have that space to be alone when you want to be.
Yeah, that's why I feel like I've what's interesting, both in Boston and in Providence, a lot of the apartments are just like duplexes or, you know what I mean, buildings that are triplexes, things like that. And I have been like, no, like I don't want to live in one of them because I feel like it's so hard to find community versus one of the apartment complexes I toured that was more out towards Boston. I'm not going to, live there. I didn't love the unit, but um literally the woman who was like giving me the tour, she knew everybody's name that we ran into in the elevators and the hallways, and they all knew her name. And they were all like, we were in the elevator with a few other people. They're all very conversational. There were people that we met who were like walking their dog and like went through the hallway, and we would stop and like pet the dog. And you know what I mean? So I can definitely see myself meeting a lot of people. And I also always have to remind myself that I'm not the only person who's living on their own in that building. Like, there's going to be a lot of people who are living by themselves wherever I choose to live that are also going to be like, I need some human interaction today. And so I just have to find them in the building and make friends with them. But
Yeah.
I don't know, I think that's why I prioritized a complex. And I will say, on the like topic of money with this, my same friend who told me not to give up that desire, if she's listening to this podcast, she will know that it is her that said this. But she said to me, she was like, rent, and we've talked about this too, but like rent is an investment in yourself. And she was saying to me that um right now me paying $2,300 a month for rent that's like my max budget. I don't really feel comfortable paying any more than that, um because I want the ability to still hit my financial goals along with that. And so that's my max. But she was saying, like, Grace, think about like you've gotten all these opportunities lately with your business. I've had all these inbounds, all whatever. I have a couple clients that I've just signed on for larger contracts than I've had before. And she's like, think about the growth that, your business could completely change and grow. And you could 3x your income in 3 months. And now that $2,300 is a lot smaller. And obviously, you don't want to bank on that happening, right? But thinking just like realistically, I'm like, okay, if I'm doing my 2024 projections, I'm projecting that I'm going to make more than what I made this year. So I can take that leap and know that I'll be okay. Again, because I have an emergency fund and I have flexibility in my budget and all of those types of things. But trusting myself to be like, okay, I don't want to settle for an apartment that is cheaper and then give up things like being in a safe location or give up the community aspect or having in-unit washer dryer. That is apparently like a novel thing up here. I don't know what it's like, the amount of places when you add the little filter to add in-unit washer dryer, you'll lose like half the apartments. It's crazy. And I refuse. I don't want to be dragging my stuff
Yeah.
downstairs to this. No, 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 no. Don't want to do it. But it's like I don't want to compromise on the things I really want, because in turn, like it is a space I spend so much of my time because I work from home. So I don't want to compromise on that, and I have to trust that I'll be able to make it work if I go with an apartment that is at the top of my budget.
Yes, that's such a good factor to consider, even if you're thinking like, do I want to move in with roommates or do I want to move in by yourself? And I think that this is truly applicable if you're doing something where your income isn't steady and you have the opportunity to grow your income. If you're working like, let's say, a salary job, this might not be as applicable. But even if you're working a salary job, but like pursuing a side hustle, or you think you want to pursue a side hustle, giving yourself that space to live without roommates is so underrated. Even things from like, okay, you go out of your room to make dinner really quick, but then you run into your roommate and you guys talk for an hour. And like, yes, that's great. Like, these are great things. It's great to have friends. It's great to like be friends with your roommates and everything, but you just lost an hour to where you might have been able to like do some work on your side hustle if you live by yourself. The amount of space that I have given myself from living by myself for the last 8 months has been so good. And I have been able to increase my income pretty significantly in these last 8 months. And I don't know if that would have happened if I was living with someone else. I really don't. It's like hard to say whether that was like a factor or not.
Yeah, so for context of people who, which I don't really even think anyone would really know at this point, I've only mentioned it a couple times, but I wanted to move to Los Angeles and I was going to move out there with a friend and I absolutely adore him. Him and I have been friends since the 8th grade. I love him. And I think he might actually be listening to this podcast too. But he is an angel and a gem. And I think we would have lived together totally well. I think we'd be great roommates. But I thought about I mean, again, I think we would have been fine, but living by myself, I feel like will give me more freedom to use the space of the apartment differently. Like I thought about how, in terms of creating content, I want to talk about because I like to budget for meals and like kind of like meal prep and plan. Like I enjoy that and I want to make more content around that once I move out. Then I was like, damn, like that's not really fair to him if I'm like, get out of the kitchen, I want to film a video, but he's like, I'm trying to eat lunch, you know? And obviously we can
Yeah.
like work around each other a little bit, but like, it's
But
just
you don't have
different.
to if you
Or
live by yourself.
right, exactly. Or if I'm like, oh, I like had this inspiration to go film the video and I want to do it in the living room or something like that, I'm not infringing on anybody else's space and they're paying for that space. If I can just go do it and like in the moment. And I think that again, I think we would have been great roommates had we lived together. But I decided for other reasons that LA was not the right choice. But I think like, yeah, just having access to every space in your apartment and just having the freedom to create anywhere as someone who's self-employed, I feel like it's really going to be a game changer. And that's why I'm trying to keep myself in the mindset of like rent is going to be an investment. And I really do think that once I move out, I'll be able to create so much different content and just have like a different perspective on different things.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I can't wait for all the content I'll create about like furnishing my apartment and like grocery
Yes.
shopping, all the adult things, right? Like so
Yeah. Well,
fun.
like you said, like if you have an idea, you can do it no matter what because it's your space. It's
Exactly.
completely your space. You don't have to like work around anyone else. But I'm curious about the whole like moving to LA versus staying in Boston thing because this is something that we want to talk about in the episode is just like the idea of everyone wants to move away, right? Like you
Yeah.
literally see videos on social media all the time that say if you want to be successful, move to a big city. And I don't think that's true. I used to be the person that was like, oh, I'm going to graduate from college. And in my mid 20s, I'm going to move to New York City or I'm going to move to a big city, whatever city that may be, because I need to get out of Pittsburgh. And I think the older that I get, the more that I'm realizing that I don't know if Pittsburgh is going to be my forever. I don't think it will be. I do think that I will move for different reasons, but I'm just starting to realize that me being in Pittsburgh versus me being in a big city does not determine my success. So I'm really curious in the whole like why you're deciding to stay in Boston versus going to LA.
Yeah, it's been quite a decision, I will say. It's been a lot. So I live in small town Massachusetts. I live in a smaller suburb and or it might even be considered a rural community to be honest. Because we're not really close to a city. The closest city is probably like 35, 45 minutes away and an hour from Boston. And I mean, it's a great place, safe town, all that, whatever. I'm glad I grew up here, had lots of opportunities with education, things like that. But I've always been the person who's like, I cannot wait to move out of Massachusetts. I hate the cold weather. I hate the snow. I just like genuinely enjoy being able to be outside all year round. And that would be my ideal scenario. So earlier this year, because I work for myself and I work remote, I decided to do a 6 week long workcation, is what we called it, to California. So my friend and I lived in Los Angeles for a month and then lived in San Francisco for 2 weeks. And when we were in LA, we lived in Venice and we lived literally a 10-minute walk, less than 10-minute walk from the beach. We were a 5-minute walk from Abbot Kinney Boulevard, which is basically, it's a little strip that just has a ton of shops and coffee shops and restaurants. And just, it was so cute, the best like location. And I went and watched the sunset at the beach almost every single day we were there. And it was such a healing experience to go do that. realized how much I really love the water and how healing that does feel to me. So we really didn't go, we went into downtown. We went to K Town one time on the trip. But other than that, we stayed in Venice and Santa Monica, which are smaller areas of the city. And they're both on the coast for people who don't know. So it was interesting to me that like I loved it that much. Like I did really enjoy being in LA, but I I was what I really enjoyed was being on the coast and being in like Venice feels kind of like a small town almost. So like that's kind of the vibe I get. But everyone was outside, the weather was so nice, everyone's walking everywhere. There's a lot more entrepreneurs. Like I would go grab coffee at like 1 p.m. because that's what I can do with my schedule and there'd be a bunch of people out. And it was so nice to see other people. I remember we were at a co-working space too at one point and I'm sitting at this table and someone else on the other side of the table they're negotiating like a several $1 million deal for their company or whatever. And I'm like, that was so inspiring to be around. And I don't get that in small town Massachusetts. So I was like, okay, I'm going to move to LA. And, I was looking at apartments. I told my friend I wanted to move. He was like, yeah, I want to move too. This would be great, whatever. And then very randomly out of nowhere, and I'm a very spiritual person. So I feel like when you get these feelings in moments of peace, like just like maybe I shouldn't do that. If it comes to you frantically, those are like your fears. But in spirituality, it's believed that if it comes to you in like a moment of calm, it's your intuition. And I got this very strange intuitive feeling of like, it's not right now. Don't move to LA right now. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I've been so excited about this. Like, it's warm weather, everything seemed great about living there. The only con was being across the country from my parents and my brother, because I'm super close to my family. But I was like, I can make it work. I'll fly home a couple times a year. It's fine, whatever. And then right after I was like, okay, I'm not going to move there. Two people that I know, the only two people that I know that live there, both said on their Instagram stories that they're both planning on either getting another property out of LA so that they can get out of LA more often, or they're going to leave LA entirely in the next couple years. And I just felt like those were signs to not make that decision. And so I had to really think about my mindset around moving. And I realized that my problem was I was seeing whatever move I make at this phase of my life as permanent. And that was a big breakthrough for me to kind of shift my mindset around moving. I was like, well, if I move out in Massachusetts and that means I'm going to live here forever and I'm never going to leave my home state. And like, oh my God, am I going to be like a townie who lives in the same town forever? Like, I don't want to do, I was like really like going through all of it. And I was like, well, like, I love warm weather. I don't want to be here in the winter, all these things. But I was like, Grace, you choosing to move somewhere is permanent. You're signing a lease that's probably going to be 12 months. So, yeah, you can take a year to figure out what exactly you want and then move somewhere else if that's what you choose. And that was a good perspective for me to have. And it has helped me start viewing life more in seasons. And in this season of my life right now, again, after getting all these signs about LA not being the right move, I've gotten so many signs that like I've gotten these crazy opportunities, like mostly with my marketing business, that I'm like, what the heck? I got off a call the other week and I literally audibly said to myself after the call, I said, what the F is my life? Because I could not even believe the offer that I had just gotten from somebody. And I'll go more into it if the offer goes through in another episode. But I was like, are you kidding? Like, I was like, okay, I'm getting all these signs that I need to like hunker down and be in growth mode for the next year and really focus on growing my business. And my hope is that by doing that, I'll eventually get to a place where I can afford to have maybe two places, one in each place where I can kind of go back and forth as I please. Um, and I don't know, it was such a hard decision to choose to stay here in Massachusetts because I don't like the winter, and that's like just a fact. But I don't know, moves aren't permanent, and that's been a big thing. And I think having my own space will make the next year better, you know?
Yes, totally agree. I love the advice to think of your life in stages, and you and I are both in that growth mode stage right now. I
Mm-hmm.
know this has been a big thing for me in staying in Pittsburgh. I've just been in such growth mode. I can't even think about like I don't know what to compare it to, but I can't even think about like very small things. Like the thought of moving to the other side of this apartment complex into a 2 bedroom is stressing me out just because like all of my brain capacity is focused on work right now because we are in such a growth stage. And when you
Mhm.
are in a growth stage, when you do the line of work that we do, you got to take advantage of it because these things
Yes.
do not last forever. And I don't think that I will be in growth mode for a significant period of time. So I'm just trying to take advantage of it right now. And that's been such a big factor in me wanting to stay in Pittsburgh because it's affordable. I can have a really nice space that works for like me trying to grow my business without stressing me out financially, and I can focus on growing my business. But then also like I am at a point in my life where I am recognizing that this isn't permanent either. Like I'm only 24. I don't turn 25 until April. So I'm still very, very young. And it's actually funny because a lot of my friends are in their late 20s and a lot of them moved away from Pittsburgh this year. I made a TikTok video a couple weeks ago where I was literally like tearing up because another one of my friends told me that they were leaving Pittsburgh and it was just making me really sad. But every time one of them told me that they were leaving, I was like, yes, literally do it. Like you are in the perfect stage of your life to make that move. They went to like Charlotte and Daytona. Like they're moving kind of far away. And they're in such a good stage to do that because they are in their late 20s and they've done all that Pittsburgh can offer them and they just like don't really have any reason to be here anymore. But I don't feel that way for me. Like I still think that there is a lot more growth here for me. And once I don't feel that anymore, I do think that I will be at a point where I do want to make that next step. But that like right now, this is such a good stepping stone for me. I really like what you said about like the having two places as well. This is something that I've been thinking a lot about recently too. You know, I do think like what's going to be my next step after Pittsburgh. I don't see myself here forever. I do kind of want to like, I think that I will be sad if I never made that move. And the lease that I just signed is actually a 15-month lease. So I will be in that apartment until March of 2025, which is right before my 26th birthday. So right now I'm kind of like, okay, when I turn 26, like what do I want my life to look like? It's the latter half of my 20s. If I do decide to make that move, what do I want that to look like? And the more I think about it, the more I could totally see myself. I love the DMV area. I love DC. When I got my first job out of college, they have locations everywhere at the agency that I was at. And I preferenced the Alexandria, Virginia office because I wanted to move to the DMV. But I didn't get that. I got my second option, which was Pittsburgh. So I stayed, which is totally for the best because the DMV is expensive. But I wanted to move to DC. So I think I could see myself like living in one of those row houses in DC and like when the time is right, maybe purchase one of them and like rent out the basement unit as an Airbnb. And then my brother, him and his girlfriend are moving down to Charleston, South Carolina. That's where they want to end up. And like with their jobs, that's going to work out for them in the next couple of years. So if they were down there, my brother is my absolute best friend, his girlfriend, best friend, love them so much. And it makes me sad that we don't live in the same state anymore. So I could see myself having like a condo in Charleston, South Carolina to be able to like drive the whatever 6 hours with me and Bella and like go stay there for a little bit and work from there, rent it out when I'm not using it, like things like that. I'm just trying to think big, think about like what I really want out of life and just recognize that the time doesn't need to be right now. I can live in Pittsburgh and that doesn't mean that I'm going to live in Pittsburgh for the rest of my life. The other thing that I've been thinking a lot about recently is, you know, if I did decide to make that move completely away from my family, I do have a dog. So it would make me really sad if I decided to like pick up and move to LA and kind of admit that my parents are really never going to see Bella unless they came out and visited me because I can't fly with her. She's a golden retriever. Like I'm not gonna like put her down in the trunk with the rest of the like cargo or whatever. So I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like I want to stay in closer proximity to my family because they are so important to me and just kind of like thinking through what area of the country will still give me what I'm looking for, but like not force me to move super far away from them.
Yeah, I think that's been something I've struggled with too because, like I said, I'm so close, especially with my mom, but I'm close with my immediate family, not my extended family. I'm really not close with many of them, but my immediate family I'm really close to. And I, it's interesting because when I was younger, I was like, I'm gonna get away, I'm gonna move. But then
Me
in
too.
the past like several months, I can like feel that I'm aging because I've been like, well, I'm like no, I'm like, what about like my dad's gonna retire this year. And I'm like, this is such a special opportunity with the way my career is and how flexible it is. This is such a special opportunity to get so much quality time with my dad where I could say, hey dad, you want to go kayaking on a Tuesday afternoon? And because he's retired, he can be like, yeah, and we can go have that experience. And then I can work a little bit more that night and not, and take that time off during the day. And it just becomes increasingly apparent to me that as I'm getting older, my parents are also getting older. And you can't get time back. So I'm like, I want to prioritize that time with them as much as I can. I also, with the whole having, two places, one in each location, I am a big believer in manifestation again, because I'm a spiritual girly. I know I said it so many times, but like, just I'm a spiritual girl, okay? Got my
And
little
you
crystals on my
inspire me
desk
to be more
behind me.
spiritual.
I put Erin onto this app called The Pattern, and now Erin sends me screenshots from the
Yeah.
app. It's
And
like
our patterns are
freakily
always,
accurate.
yeah, our patterns are always so aligned. I sent you one the other
Yeah,
day that said that like we would be good roommates or something because the pattern
yeah,
you
and good
can link
partners.
it to like friends and stuff. And
Yep,
Grace and I, it was like you guys were something I don't know, but it said that we
yeah.
would make good roommates.
It is my favorite app in the world, but with manifestation, part of it is like setting the things that you want to manifest and what you desire a little bit further ahead than you even think. So, for example, I had a business coach who was also spiritual, and I remember telling her, I'm like, this was the beginning of 2022, and I was like, I want to have like, I think it was like an $8,000 month, and she was like, why not 10? And I was like, I don't know. She's like, why not 12? I was like, I don't know, I'm like, because 8 feels believable. She was like, go with what is like more than believable. Go a
Mhm.
little higher. So I was like, all right, girl, I'm like, you're crazy, but like, fine, I'll try to manifest a 10K month, whatever. What do you know? I set a deadline for myself of like the end of July or something like that. And I literally had a 10K month that June. And I just think setting your goals, like pick your goal and then set it a little higher. So I want to own some sort of property by my late 20s for sure. Okay, so what if I own a duplex in Massachusetts or I own a duplex in Florida or something like that, and I rent out half of it? That covers a decent portion of my mortgage. Or I can own two duplexes in two places and
Yeah.
kind of go back and forth between the two. Like, is that possible for me in this exact moment? No. No, it is not. But I think about how much has changed in my life in the past year. I mean, last July, I wasn't posting consistently on TikTok. I think that's when I started posting consistently on TikTok. But a year and a half ago, I wasn't doing that. And now TikTok, I make money from TikTok. Even just my marketing business, I've like increased my income with my marketing business so much. I think about how much has changed in the past year of my life, and I want to believe in and manifest the same amount of growth and change in the next year. So it's like, okay, my life 2 years from now, because I turn 25 next week, when I'm 27, I could be in the place to own two homes. I
Yes.
just never know, you know? So it's like, I don't know. I feel like setting those goals further ahead than you even think you're capable of helps
Mhm.
manifest them. And
Yeah. And then
I
if
want
it
to,
doesn't like,
dream big.
for sure. I think people are afraid to set goals because they're afraid of not being able to reach them. But even
Yeah.
if it's something not like, oh, I want to own like 10 houses in the next like 6 months, like it can be something smaller than that. Like, oh, I want to be able to move out of my parents' house into that first apartment, or I want to be able to like not re-sign my lease with my roommates and be able to move, like set those goals for what you
Hmm.
truly want, because the worst case scenario is you have to do something that's like one or two steps back from that. But I think
Hmm.
people are afraid to kind of like set those. We are planning on filming an entire episode on our 2024 goals and kind of like reflecting on this year versus looking ahead to next year, to have that episode come out on New Year's for right at the beginning of 2024, which I'm
Yes.
so excited to talk through that episode with you, because I'm just trying to start goal setting and like all of that, and that's like one of my favorite
Mhm.
things to do, and I know it is too, so I think that's going to be such a fun episode.
Yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about, I know we wanted this episode to be all about like the cost of moving in your 20s, but this has been
Mhm.
such a fun episode to talk through just some of like the thought process around moving in
Yeah.
general, not even just with the financial aspect, because so many people are in their 20s struggle with this, not knowing where to move or when's the right time to move or anything like that. But let's talk a little bit about like saving for a move, or the cost of it or whatever you're seeing when you're going through all these tours. I know you posted a video about like application fees and all of that. There's so much that goes
Oh my
into
God.
paying for a move. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I started saving, I want to say it was around the beginning of this year. And because I live at home with my parents, I obviously am not paying rent. I don't pay for groceries. I buy my own groceries like occasionally because I have food allergies, but I'm really not, I don't have those expenses. So I will say I do have a lot more wiggle room in my budget. So what I started doing was I set up a sinking fund for moving. And I don't know how much I was setting aside for that every month, but my goal was to save $10,000 before I moved out. And so I did that in about 10-ish months, earlier than that. I think it was like 8 or 9-ish months. So I finished it in August or September. And so that number came from me thinking about the fact that I would have to pay to ship my car across the country. Because again, I was planning to move to LA at this point, paying for the last month's rent and security deposit, which I knew I'd be splitting with somebody because I thought I would probably have a roommate when I started saving for this, and paying to ship some of my belongings. I wasn't going to take a lot of my stuff because it wouldn't be cost effective to ship some of my furniture. Like my furniture in my room is all from Amazon, so I'm like I could just rebuy it. I'm not going to pay to ship it. But that was kind of what I started doing, and then I started researching the price of apartments in August, and I was shook, very shook. It was a humbling experience looking at the rent prices in August. And so I ended up doing some research and finding out that August and July, those are like peak times to move, especially in Boston, given the number of schools in Boston. A lot of people are, because school's not in session, it's an easier time to move, and there's nice weather, it makes it easier to move, yada yada, all of that. So the rent prices were a lot higher. So I decided to wait until the winter because rent prices here drop between November and February. And I will say I have noticed a significant decrease. Some of the apartments that were previously $2,600 are now like 23, 24, which is obviously still very expensive, but that's a significant difference. So that's kind of been my approach to doing it, and just trusting that I find an apartment and have enough saved to move myself.
The time of year is such an underrated hack. This is a big reason why I decided to move into this 2 bedroom in my apartment complex. Obviously, my apartment complex is really good about like transferring into different units within the complex. All you have to do is pay a $500 transfer fee, and that really just pays to clean your current apartment. So it's almost like you're breaking your current lease and starting a new lease fresh. But since you're moving still within the complex, you don't have to pay the 2 months rent or whatever it is to
That's nice.
actually break your lease, which is so nice. But how it came about was our 2 friends live in a 2 bedroom first floor corner unit, and the corner units are so nice. They have so much more space than like the inward units, just because like obviously it's on the corner. And the patio is on the corner. So I think that's going to be really good to have some like extra privacy as opposed to like looking inward right now with Bella and everything. So this is like one of the nicest apartments in this complex. Everyone who I told I got the unit, they were like, oh my gosh, they're like really jealous. But the people, we're friends with the people who currently live in it. And the only reason they're breaking their lease is because they got a house. So once I heard they were breaking their lease, I applied for the unit and got it, whatever. They currently pay $2,000 a month for it, and I got it for $1,870 because of the time of year.
Oh
And I
my
will
God.
say it's only $1,870 because I was willing to sign the 15-month lease. If I signed a 12-month lease, I think it was going to be like 2000 to 21, just because if it was 12 months, then the lease would come up again in December, and like they know that they can
People
raise the
don't want
rent
to move.
in
Yeah.
March versus December. I don't know. I don't know how the algorithm works and everything, but I know that I got such a better deal just because I was moving in December or January or February. It probably would have even gotten even lower, just because of the time of year. Whereas my current unit, my lease is going to be up at, I think it's the end of April, and I currently pay $1,480. So when my lease was up, if I was going to stay in this unit, they probably would have raised my rent to close to $1,700 because it's almost summertime. And I've heard from everyone else in this complex that when their lease is up, their rent goes up like $200-ish around that time. So I was like, I can move into this other unit, have an extra bedroom, be on the corner, have 600 more square feet, and lock in that 1870 price for 15 months. Or I can wait until my current lease is up at the end of April and have to pay $1,700 at that time to be in a unit that I don't even want to be in. It like just made no sense. So the time of year, like if you're looking to move and you're finding it really frustrating, like you just said, wait until the winter time.
Yeah, especially if you live in a cold place. I don't know if it goes down in places like Florida where it's like warm all year round, but the good thing about locking in a rate like that too, as you were saying this, I'm like, the rent prices have gone up so much. Can you imagine what the rent prices are going to be in 15 months?
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
feel like they're going to be so much higher. So I feel that, locking in that rate is smart. I don't know. You're gonna
Yeah.
save that
I
rent
I think
price
it's
for a
I
long
think it's
time.
actually perfect because if I do decide that when this lease is up, I want to buy something, which again, totally don't know if that's going to be like the stage of life that I'm in, but like if I did decide that I wanted to buy something when my lease is up, it's a lot like a lot more properties are listed in the spring than in the winter. It's kind of hard to buy
Hmm.
in the winter, just because a lot of people aren't listing at that time. So I think the March time period would work even better for that as well. So I think like all around, I got a really good deal. But you
Dang.
mentioned the cost of movers and like kind of thinking through like, oh, I want to save up $10,000 because I want to ship my car and I need to pay for all of this stuff. Like I looked up some stats on the cost of movers before this episode, and they said on average, you should expect to pay around $2,000 for movers if you're moving locally, and around $5,000 if you're paying for movers to move long distance, so like to a different state or anything like that. I feel like if I was in a situation where I was moving states, I would sell my furniture and buy new stuff when I got there. I feel like
Yeah.
$5,000, unless you have like super nice stuff, if you're just buying like IKEA furniture and you don't have like super nice stuff, just sell it and get new stuff. That's why I tell people like when we did our save versus splurge episode, furniture is a major save for me. I'm not going to splurge on furniture because you move so much in your 20s that the realistically you're probably not going to reuse stuff in every single place
Mhm.
that you go to.
Yeah, I will say I love the furniture I have in my room right now, and I'd be like sad to give it up, but at the same time, it's literally all from Amazon. I have an
Yeah.
entire dresser that I think it was $120. They don't sell it anymore, unfortunately, but my desk is from IKEA. My bed frame was $90 from Amazon. You know, like I no, it's not worth it. And that's why I had mentioned that I saved 10 grand in one of my videos. People were asking, well, how much did you save to prep? And I said that amount. And there were some people who were like, that's completely unrealistic. You're going to need way more money. And I was like, okay, here's the thing. I would be splitting it with somebody if I was moving in. But also when I move out towards Boston in state, like I I will be recruiting my friends and family is what I will be doing, and I will be buying them some pizza or something as a thank you. I will not be paying anybody, you know what I
Oh my
mean?
gosh.
Or I'll like pay for people on TaskRabbit or
Yes,
something
I
like that to just move people, like to move my stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not going
yeah,
to pay for a professional moving company to move my Amazon
to
furniture
move
an hour
locally.
down the road. It's silly.
TaskRabbit is such a hack if you're moving locally.
Mhm.
When I moved into this apartment, I still had some furniture at my last place. I had, I think, a bed, a dresser, a desk, and then just some like boxes and stuff. So it was like a trailer load full of things. And my last place, all of my stuff was on a third floor. So I was like, my dad cannot bring my bed all the way down 3 floors. Like it's just not going to work. We don't have a truck. Like it would be this whole big thing. So I hired someone off of TaskRabbit. He brought his girlfriend as his assistant. I did help them because I'm like fully able to help like move my stuff,
Yeah.
but I don't have like a big enough car. So everything had to go into their SUV, and he brought a trailer. And between the three of us, we like packed all of the stuff up. He brought it to my new place. He rebuilt my bed. He like rebuilt whatever else needed like done in my bedroom, and he billed hourly. And I think with tip, it came to like, I'm not even kidding, $450. It was so cheap. I think he gave me his business card. I think when I move, I'm going to rehire him and
Yeah.
just have him move all of my stuff into the new place, but then do things like hang my TVs, hang my curtains, hang my picture frames, like hide the wires in my TVs, all of the things that I don't know how to do.
Mhm.
I think I'm going to do that and pay like less than $500. That's such a good deal.
Yeah, I love the idea too, especially since we're both independent workers. I love the idea of being able to support another independent worker that is, just side hustling to
Yes,
make
he's
some
side
cash.
hustling.
Yeah, I have been like I'm familiar with TaskRabbit because I write about side hustles and things for one of my jobs. But yeah, that's my plan is to use that whenever I move. Even just yeah, to like help set up furniture or, move stuff down the street cuz none of us have large enough cars to put my bed in, but yeah, I that'll be the move is just to use somebody on TaskRabbit.
Was smart. I think about that all the time too because everyone comments on my TikTok videos being like, "Why do you buy new stuff? Like, get stuff on Facebook Marketplace." And I'm like, I can't carry stuff. I mean, yes, I do have a
Yeah.
boyfriend, and like the two of us could probably carry most things, but I drive a Nissan Sentra.
Yeah.
Nothing is fitting in the trunk of my car, not even like a coffee table or something like that. So for me to rent a U-Haul or like pay a worker to like go pick up a sectional couch or something to save maybe $300. But then once you factor in all of those costs, like, are you even saving any extra money? And then you just wasted like an entire day. Like, how do you value
Mhm.
your time? Could you have been
Mhm.
spending that time like making more money? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think for mine, like, I'm definitely going to be buying new, like the big furniture, like a sectional, and then
Mhm.
I want a king size bed, those two big pieces for sure. But then maybe I'll look for like coffee tables and end tables and things like that on Facebook Marketplace if I can find something. Also, the other thing, I'm not going to drive an hour to go pick up like a coffee table.
No.
I see that all the time too. Like Pittsburgh is not big, but it's also not small. And like depending
Yeah.
on the hour, you're going to sit in a lot of traffic and all of that stuff. I'm not going to drive to the other side of the city to pick up something like a coffee table. So just all of those considerations. I don't know. I'm going to be doing a lot of Black Friday shopping for some home stuff because that's the pro of moving right before Christmas as well. I can get some good
Yeah.
deals.
I know. I wish I knew which complex I'd be moving into. I mean, maybe I'll see this apartment and love it and sign the lease right then and there because I guess they do have a deal or something if you like for a look-in lease. That's what they call it. But I wish I knew because then I could take advantage of all the Black Friday sales. But it's fine. It's fine. There's going to be some Christmas sales, and that's when I'll end up having to stock up. But what other things have you done or are you planning to do? I guess to financially prepare for moving into an apartment that is more expensive and you're arguably going to need, I'm sure, more furniture and more
Yes.
stuff.
So, in terms of buying things, I've decided I'm using the rest of my fun money sinking fund this year to afford furniture and all of that. I haven't made any videos about this yet. I don't think I want to start doing that, but I have about $3,000 left. So, that's going to try to be my budget. If I go over that, I'm not going to like hurt, like, I'm not going to like be that upset because I think I'm at a point where I know I'm going to be here for 15 months and I know the stuff that I buy now, I'm probably going to take with me wherever I go. So I want to invest in like a little bit higher quality of stuff. So I've just been kind of looking around for things like a sectional, a king size bed, a new mattress. My mattress is not good at all. I bought a really cheap Amazon one in college and I'm just ready to get better sleep. My Aura ring is she is about to call me out on that one.
Yeah.
But I'm just ready to like get some nicer stuff. So I'm using my fun money sinking fund for that to get everything that I need for the apartment. And then, like I said, I only had to pay a $500 transfer fee. That just came out of my emergency fund. And then I like kind of replenished it after that. But moving forward, you also asked about how am I thinking through like my rent increasing. So
Mm.
I've made a couple videos about this in the last couple of months, but I'm trying to pay off my car before I move into my apartment so that my car payment offsets the increase in rent because
Mm.
right now I pay almost $300 for my car payment and I have about $3,000 left on my car loan. So I don't know if I'm necessarily I mean, if I stopped like my brokerage account investments and didn't contribute to my sinking funds and stuff this month, I could probably pay down a lot of it, but I don't know if I'm going to pay it off necessarily as soon as I moved into the apartment.
Mm.
But that is a big goal of mine is to try to pay off my car loans so that I'm not contributing monthly to my car payment anymore. And that extra money can go towards my rent to kind of like not affect my budget.
Yeah, that's smart. I was trying to figure out how much I could afford to pay in rent, and I literally I made a tester budget. We both have budget templates, and so I just made like a copy of one of the tabs of my budget, and I put in, okay, here's my income. Let me play around with the numbers and see once I factor in rent, groceries, utilities, parking, like all those things. What do the numbers actually look like? And that was really helpful for me to figure out how much I can afford and to start making amends with the fact that I'm going to have to pay a lot of money for rent. Because I think like one of the things I kind of wrote down that I wanted to mention here with rent is I feel like we're in a time where rent is just more expensive. I will not find an apartment for $1,000 a month here. It's like unless I want to live in a sketchy place with 8 people in a house, it's not going to happen. And I think being realistic is it goes back to what we say, and I feel like a lot of these episodes will focus on what you can control. And so I realized, okay, I cannot control the rent prices. I know that it is time for me to move out. I want to move out. I'm ready for this chapter, whatever. So what can I control? Okay, I can control how much I am spending on groceries to an extent, right? I can control how much I'm spending on excessive shopping. I can control how much I'm spending on random fun things that maybe I really don't need. And so if I do want to have an apartment that I love for 2,300, when I run the numbers, I know that okay, I am going to make it a priority to shop at Aldi. I'm not going to be going to Whole Foods, which I don't shop at Whole Foods anyways now. I am a budget grocery shopper. I will be buying the store brands. Um, but stuff like that, I'm going to track my spending throughout the month so that I can make sure I'm not going over in other categories and that I can still meet my financial goals. Like just running the numbers, I feel like is really important. But you have to be realistic about how much everything costs at this point in time and do the best that you can. Because it's like
Yes.
you don't want to stay in this one apartment because you're craving more space, you're feeling a little maybe stuck in your space or feeling like you're being pinched a little bit in there. So staying there maybe is not the answer. So figuring out how to make it work financially and, you know, doing that, like, okay, I'm going to try to pay off my car so I can direct how much I'm spending on my car loan to rent is a smart way to think about it.
Definitely. I love the tester budget idea. I think with anything in life, it's really important to just kind of run the numbers before you make any big decisions, like signing a lease and locking yourself into those big fixed expenses, like we always say. Because I know there's a rule of thumb because we get asked all the time, like, okay, how much should I be spending on rent as a, I guess, percentage of my income? And there's that rule of thumb out there that your rent should be no more than 30% of your gross income, which one, I don't understand why they made a rule of thumb with gross income.
I
Like
don't either. It
who
doesn't make sense
budgets,
to
you
me.
don't budget with your gross income. Like you have to
No.
take out taxes and then your net income is after taxes, obviously. But they say 30% of your gross income. I know we had like some notes here about like, obviously it's been a big theme, like everything's expensive right now. It might not be realistic to keep your rent under that 30% of your gross income number, but I don't love that rule of thumb regardless, just because everyone's situation is so different. Like 30% might make sense if, let's say, you don't have a car payment or you don't have student loans, but someone who doesn't have those other big fixed expenses, their budget and what like rent works for them is going to look so different than if you're in 100K worth of student loan debt or if you have a $500 a month car payment. So I don't love that rule of thumb of just like, oh, use 30% of your gross income. I think it's more beneficial for you to use some type of budgeting tool to plug all of your information in and kind of see how the numbers work to see what you can afford.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either that it's based on gross income. I've never understood why that's the
Yeah.
case because especially as like self-employed people, my revenue, my gross revenue and my profit look really
So
it's
different.
different. Like I don't it just that doesn't make sense to me because I could afford so much more in rent if that were the case. But realistically, if I were to pay like that 30% of my gross income on rent, if I were to actually pay that, I would have not
You'd be
much
done
left
with it.
over after paying rent. Yeah, like it's just kind of strange to me. I will say running the tester budget made me feel so much better because I
Mhm.
could play around with the numbers. I could say, okay, maybe if I don't want to have $2,300 a month in rent, how does it look if I do 2,200? What do I realistically want to be spending on? And I made sure to leave myself, extra buffer. I made sure to factor money in for self-care. Like I made it almost like my ideal budget. And what I did actually was I made the budget and then said, okay, what is my ideal income to be able to live this life? So I kind of worked
Yes,
backwards.
I do
And
that too.
now I'm at a place where, I'm like, okay, I'm actually making that ideal income now post tax, so I can live that life. But it can be good too if maybe you're like, okay, in an ideal world, I I'm paying this much for rent, and that doesn't leave me money for self-care every month, but I would really love to have an extra 250 a month for self-care. So I'm going to take on a side hustle and try to make an extra 350 a month so that I know I have 250 post-tax and can spend that on self-care. It gives you, you can prioritize what the needs are, and maybe self-care comes after the rent expense because rent is more expensive than, self-care, but it just gives you, I don't know, it allows you to kind of work backwards too and figure out where do I need to make more income, or maybe I can go back to my boss and negotiate a raise, or a slight increase in my pay to be able to hit that ideal monthly income to
Mhm.
afford what you want to afford in your tester budget.
Yeah, definitely. I think that can give a lot of peace of mind to a lot of people too, if they do create that ideal budget, not factoring in the income piece and then being like, oh, wait, like I actually do make like $300 less than this, and I need
Mhm.
to maybe pick up 2 babysitting gigs that will give me X amount of money to cover that spread. And now all of a sudden, I have everything that I want to have because I just created my ideal budget, like income aside. So that could give people some peace of mind too. So that's
Yeah.
a really good tip. We are totally over time. But I love these longer episodes. Let us know if
I
you
agree.
want to give us some feedback. Like if you like the longer episodes, if you would prefer we keep them a little bit shorter, definitely give us that feedback at the end. But let's do some listener questions before we end, because you guys really like this segment. We really love answering your questions. So let's get into them. We only have a couple here. The first one is, we got a question asking, do you have specific banks that you would recommend to be able to set up sinking funds without account minimums? Grace, do you want to take this one?
I love Ally Bank. I am a stan. I think that sinking funds are ideal to put in a high yield savings account. And what I love about Ally's high yield savings account is it has buckets, which basically just gives you, they're like little folders within your savings account. And it just gives you visual separation. And that's how I do my sinking funds. You can also set up goals on them. So, for example, my moving one, I had a sinking fund for moving, and it was had a $10,000 goal. And so, as you contribute to it, Ally will show you, you are 30% of the way to your goal, or things like that. And you can set a deadline for it too. So it can tell you, sometimes they'll send you little email alerts and be like, your goal is quickly approaching and you're less than 50% of the way. Like, what are some ways you can maybe contribute more, or things like that? And I really love that. And I don't believe there's any account minimum. I don't think there is. I'm like 99% sure that there's no account minimum on Ally's high yield savings account, but I absolutely love it. And also, one thing to mention here too is you can open a bank account like that and try it and just like get in it and kind of like, mess around with things and see how you like it before you move your money into it. So, know that you can open one at multiple institutions. There's no con to
Yeah,
doing that. It doesn't
it's
like run your
different.
credit or anything like that. Yeah.
Yes, it's different than a credit card. You can like
Yeah.
open them and then decide not to use them. I was going to say that
Yeah.
about, so I use Capital One, which first of all, like these recommendations, they're not like hard and fast. Like Grace said, like you can try multiple different ones. Like you don't have to
Mhm.
use Ally or Capital One. There's great options between like Discover, Marcus, Betterment. Like there are a ton out there and they all do relatively the same thing. They all pay relatively around the same rates for their high yield savings accounts. So just kind of like finding the tool that you like, the UI of the app, I think will, like, you need to find a tool that you're going to be like excited to open the app and check in with your money and stuff. So the recommendation really doesn't matter as much as you would think, but you can open accounts and then just like not put money into them and then they'll just close it. Like I know with Capital One, they don't have an account minimum per se, but if you open, so they don't have buckets. You have to open separate savings accounts for all of your sinking funds, which is what I do, but it literally takes like 1 minute. Once you have one account with Capital One, they already have all of your information. So all you have to do is like click open another savings account and then all of your information is pre-populated, so it doesn't take long at all. So I think I have 6 or 7 different savings accounts. They're all high yield savings accounts with Capital One, and there's no account minimum, but you have to have some type of money in the account. If you don't fund the account within 60 days, then they just close it because they're not going to have the account open if it's sitting at $0 for 60 days. So you just have to like put money into it, but you don't have to like set up direct deposit or you don't have to do any of those things. It's just having something in there.
Yes. The second listener question, I think this is a good one for you to answer, is how to manage paying off debt while having a ton of weddings and such to go to in your 20s.
Oh, I love this question. I actually just got this question in one of my question stickers like 10 minutes before we filmed this episode, and I made sure to add it in here because so many people struggle with this. This is such a big thing for so many people in their 20s, regardless of if you're paying off debt, but especially if you are trying to pay off debt or hit some type of financial goal and you feel like all of your friends' big life events are kind of like impacting your ability to do that. I know we're in a stage where none of my friends are getting married. A lot of my friends are single, but my boyfriend's 27 and he's at the age where everyone he knows, like all of his high school friends, all of his college friends, everyone's getting married. I think we have like 6 or 7 save the dates for next summer already.
Oh my
One of them
God.
is mine and the other, whatever, are his. So we are going to be at so many weddings, and some of them are out of state. Luckily, not too many of them, but a lot of people have to go to out of state weddings, and it gets to be a lot. I will say, just like really getting honest with yourself about which ones you truly want to be at and not feeling forced to attend every single wedding that you get invited to. I know it can be really challenging when you feel like all of these people are super important in your life, but unless you currently see, like if you have not seen this person in the last year, but you still feel like they're important to you, I don't think that they will be offended if you don't come to their wedding. So really getting honest with yourself about like, okay, I have 10 weddings to go to next year and I cannot afford to either fly to them or bring gifts to all of them, get outfits for all of them, like all of that stuff. It really adds up more than you would think. So just get honest with yourself about what you truly want to attend and what you don't. If you're in a situation where you are asked to be in the wedding party for a lot of weddings, this is especially true. Really think through the decision to say yes to that invitation to be in the wedding party before you agree to it, because it's kind of like writing a blank check. There's a lot of expenses that goes into that, especially with like destination bachelor and bachelorette parties. If the wedding is a destination wedding, it all gets to be a lot. So thinking through what you actually want to go to. And then the second piece of this, I think, is just getting realistic about how many you're going to and then saving for those. So if you say, okay, there's absolutely 3 weddings that I have to go to next year, and that's just it. Like I have to go to these. These people are so important to me. I have to go to them. Thinking through like, okay, what are the expenses that goes along with going to these weddings? And then how much do I need to save every single month to be prepared to bring gifts, fly if it's a destination, get an outfit, like all of those things, and just save a little bit every single month so that it doesn't feel like it's completely blowing your budget when the wedding does come up. But this is a
Absolutely.
tricky one.
I will say it kind of goes back to what the advice my therapist gave me at the beginning of the episode is like sometimes living in accordance with your values means saying no when you want to say yes. And if you are really prioritizing your financial life and that is something that you want to focus on, it is okay to say no to, someone's wedding that you really don't, maybe you don't know them that well, or, you haven't talked to them in over a year. The other thing I'll add too is, I mean, if you're paying off credit card debt, this is probably not going to be applicable to you. But if you're paying off something like a car loan, or you know what I mean, like you're managing everything effectively, you're not like spiraling into debt. You can leverage your credit card points if you have credit card points. They're incredibly valuable, especially if you transfer them to a transfer partner, and so that can help subsidize some of the cost of the hotel stays or the flights. Obviously, don't go like getting yourself into credit card debt simply to get credit card points, and be smart about debt always. But if you have credit card points, you should also use them. But yeah, think ahead. I'm so glad all my friends are not getting married because
Me too.
I can't. No, too expensive.
Yes. Well, that is the last of our listener questions. Bella is ready to go outside. So I think that means that we have talked for entirely too long. But this is such a fun episode. I'm really happy that we decided to cover this topic. It's something so on the top of everyone's minds in their 20s. So I hope you guys liked this episode. If you want to see more, I guess follow us on Instagram. What's like the best way for everyone to kind of get a hold of us or see more?
Yes, join us over on Instagram at girlstalkmoneypod. Also, if you have listener questions that you want us to answer in a future episode, you can leave them directly within Spotify. There's a little Q&A section at the bottom, and you can leave them right there. We will, if you leave positive feedback, we might publish your response. But if you're asking a question, we're not going to publish your question if you would prefer it to stay anonymous and not be publicized. But you can always leave your questions there. You can also always shoot us a DM on Instagram, again, at Girls Talk Money Pod. But yeah, with that, I guess we will see you next Monday.
Yay! Thanks for joining. See you next Monday.